Turning to the biggest story in Australian politics this week, Liberal leader Sussan Ley has sacked Jacinta Price from her shadow ministry. This all began when Jacinta Price, on September the 3rd, appeared on the ABC's afternoon briefing program hosted by Patricia Karvelis to defend the August 31 March for Australia rallies against mass migration. It was also National Flag Day, where earlier in the Senate, Jacinta Price and One Nation leader Pauline Hanson were ordered by the Senate President to remove Australian flags that they were draped in. This was after Greens lead Senator Nick McKim complained that they were props and demanded the same right to drape himself in the Palestinian flag. Price told Karvelis that our infrastructure and housing supply can't keep up with the current core number of immigrants coming into Australia. She then accused the Labor government of ensuring that they were bringing in migrants who would vote for them, and specifically named the Indian community. An hour after the interview aired, Price put out a statement saying that it was a mistake to suggest Australia had anything other than a non-discriminatory immigration policy. Australia has had a non-discriminatory immigration policy since 1973. Various Australian Indian individuals and community groups took offence at Price's comments. The next day, she was asked by the media whether she would apologise for her remarks.
Do you regret the comments you made to the ABC about Indian migrants, and you apologise for them?
So, I don't believe I have anything to apologise about. In the context of discussing the marches that took place on the weekend, it was the ABC interviewer who pushed the issue, who brought up the issue of anti-Indian migration. What I was doing was highlighting the fact that there is huge concern for Labor's mass migration agenda, which is applying pressure to housing, to infrastructure, to services. And then I was further pursued on this line of talking. So what I did was point out the fact that, yes, Indian migrants are the second largest migrant group to this country and soon to be the largest migrant group to this country. A recent Redbridge poll told us that 85% of those who have Indian ancestry, and that's my children included, by the way, but 85% voted for Labor. I know those in my family that were of voting age didn't, but 85% did. So these were the facts that I was pointing out. And I was pointing out the fact that my concern is for Australian families in this country under so much pressure. And that's Australian families, whether from a migrant background, whether citizens, whether residents in this country. And so we should be concerned about mass migration in Australia with those sorts of pressures occurring in our country, and rightly so. It is up to the government to do something about this, and this is what we as the coalition would like to see a change in. So that's to state for the record, that is what the conversation was about.
It was on a live stream with Drew Pavlou, where Redbridge polling director and former Lanc Labor campaign operative Kos Samaras first said that 85% of Indian Australians voted for the Labor Party at the last federal election, which Price was quoting in that interview.
They are much bigger and more important electorally to Labor than, I would say, the Muslim community is. But yet, Labor's made this decision. So what I'm arguing here is that I don't think it is purely just electoral politics. Because if it was, there are things in their base, bits and pieces in their base, which are massive. Like, 85% of the Indian diaspora voted for the Labor Party at the last election. We'll give thereabouts. Mm-hmm. It varies across the country.
What was the number, sorry, Kos?
About 85%. In our polling, whenever we poll them, they're about that. Two-party preferred. Huge numbers.
On September 5, Price did an interview with the editor of the Indian Australian news website, The Australia Today. followed by a statement on her own social media saying, "I deeply value Australia's Indian community. My words were never meant to disparage anyone, and I recognise the enormous contribution Indian Australians make as friends, colleagues, business owners, and community leaders. My concern has always been about the broader pressures of mass migration on housing, infrastructure, and families from all backgrounds, not any specific community. I will always stand alongside our Indian community and every community that makes Australia stronger." But the pressure on Jacinta Price to apologise intensified, led by her own Liberal colleagues. Sussan Ley said on ABC Insiders on Sunday that the comments Jacinta Price made about Indian migration were wrong and won't be repeated. Manager of Government Business, Alex Hawke, told Sky News Sunday Agenda that he had called Price to ask her to consider apologising. However, Price put out a statement later that day on social media saying that Alex Hawke did not have a conversation with her and, in fact, accused him of cowardly and inappropriate conduct. He instead called a staffer who Price accused Hawke of berating and said that if she did not comply with his request, she'd end up like another female member of the coalition. That is believed to be a reference to Jane Hume, who was sacked from the Shadow Ministry for her Chinese spies on Labor booths comments before the election. Hume has been in the media as well and said that Alex Hawke was acting as a henchman for Sussan Ley. That evening, Sussan Ley visited Sydney's Little India in Harris Park with her Shadow Immigration and Multicultural Affairs Minister Paul Scar and her Shadow Attorney General Julian Leeser. But some Indian businesses refused to host them, saying that they would not engage with the Liberal Party unless Price apologised for her remarks or was sacked from the Shadow Ministry. Julian Leeser apologised on her behalf during a speech at a Hindi language school in his Barawa electorate. Her former Nationals colleagues, Bridget McKenzie and Barnaby Joyce, said that she should apologise. Things came to a head yesterday when Jacinta Price was asked if she had confidence in Sussan Ley's leadership.
Do you have confidence in Sussan Ley's leadership? Do you have confidence in her leadership?
Look, again, those matters are for our party room.
Do you have full confidence in her leadership?
Those matters are for our party room. My focus is to go forward and to ensure that we're doing the right thing by the Australian people, which is what we're elected to do.
Do you fully back her leadership?
That is what my concerns are about.
That evening, Sussan Ley sacked Jacinta Price as her Shadow Minister for Defence, Industry and Personnel.
Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa Price has failed the test of high standard that I have set for members of my shadow ministry. Several days ago, Senator Nampijinpa Price made comments that were deeply hurtful to Indian Australians. The comments were wrong and should not have been made. And despite being given the time and space to apologise, Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa Price did not offer an apology today. Today, Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa Price critically failed to provide confidence in my leadership of the Liberal Party. Confidence in the leader is a requirement for serving in the Shadow Ministry. A couple of hours ago, I spoke to the Senator and I advised her of my decision.
Stay with us as we continue to cover all of these unfolding stories. I'm Tim Wilms, and that's Snapshot. Good night.